are some sounds that can help save lives. Wireless emergency alerts. Now on many mobile devices, use the unique sound and vibration to bring you critical information about emergencies in your area. With updates from local sources you know and trust, you can be in the know wherever you are. Learn more at ready.gov/alerts. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
What do I cherish? Precious moments. Watching Dad read to my little Aaron. That's why I'm so grateful I insisted on an eye exam when I noticed him struggling with the words on the page. We found out Dad has age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. Fortunately, the doctor caught it in time for treatment, so Dad can still read. Protect yourself and your loved ones. Call the Foundation's Fighting Blindness today at 1-800-BLINDNESS for a free packet on preventing or managing AMD. The cure is in sight.
We all share a common journey. We wanted to serve our country and protect the things we love. But for some of us, coming home...
All right, I'm ready when you are, Brian.
You ready?
Yep.
In the service, we had each other's backs. But as veterans, it can sometimes feel like we're all alone.
For confidential support, call 1-800-273-8255 and press 1. Chat at veteranscrisisline.net or text 838-255.
CDC is working to help keep you and your community safe from the threat of the novel coronavirus. There's six ways to in your community. Make a household plan. Learn how to prepare to take quick action if someone gets sick. Older adults and people with chronic medical conditions are at greater risk. Take extra steps to protect them. Think about what you will do if there are changes to your work schedule. And remember to always practice good health habits, such as frequently washing hands with soap and water, staying home when sick, and covering coughs and sneezes. For more information, visit cdc.gov.
This is WGBB AM 1240 and W240 DFFM 95.9 Freeport, New York.
The views expressed in the following program do not necessarily represent those of the staff, management, or owners of WGBB.
And that's right, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of Sports Talk 1240. I'm your host, Rob Cramer, taking over right now at the 9 o'clock hour after the great Bill Donahue. And I couldn't ask for a better lead-in, as a great guy Bill is. And like he just announced a couple of minutes ago, if you want to hear a great show next week, tune in at 8 p.m. as Bill Donahue is going to be hosting former AL MVP, former AL Rookie of the Year Fred Lynn, and he's also going to be having as his second guest former Met great David Wright. So that's a great lineup right there. You can't ask for anything more than that. Bill Donahue is really knocking it out of the park, as he does always. So tune in next week. But before all that, I got a little show for you tonight, as right here on Sunday night, September 20th, as we're feeling summer turn into fall. Football season is now upon us. We're surprisingly in the Stanley Cup final going on in hockey right now. Same time as baseball's winding down right now. Just a week left in this season, and if you're a Met fan, it has been a painful one, except for the one sliver of happiness that we got last week when we learned that Steve Cohen, the $14 billion investment banker, is going to be buying the New York Mets from the Wilpons. The transaction is supposedly going to be completed with an owner vote at the November owner meetings. The Mets needing 23 out of the 29 other owners to approve this sale. So it looks like it's trending towards that happening. So that's one good piece of news Met fans have to hang our hats on. Another loss today that they had was is not one of those pieces of good news. But we'll get into that in a little bit. As like I said, I'm hosting Sports Talk 1240 right now. Thanks for tuning in. You can check out all of our information on sportstalk1240.com. Any of our old shows, any of the hosts you want to see, former guests, anything along those lines, please check it out. Also, check out the website for the station here, WGBB. That would be AM1240WGBB.com. You can also check out this show on Facebook, Sports Talk 1240, and Twitter at Sports Talk 1240. And you can also check me out on Twitter at my last name Cramer. That's CramerNY, Cramer, New York. So check that out anytime you'd like. Thanks for tuning in again. Like I said, we got a lot to get into aside from the Mets ownership change, the pending change that should be coming hopefully in the next 6 to 8 weeks. The Mets dropped 2 out of 3 to Atlanta this weekend. Today just being a one of those tough Met losses that we've seen all year. Rick Porcello actually pitched a hell of a game today. It was 1-0 in the eighth inning until former Met Travis d'Arnaud, who by the way in 23 at bats this season has managed to drive in 11 runs. This guy has pounded the Mets into oblivion. He's hitting 330 against not just the Mets but everybody this year. He's hitting 330 for the season, and this looks like he could be another one of the pieces that got away for the Mets. And you can run down that list of guys that have gotten away and pounded the Mets in the past. Justin Turner, Daniel Murphy. Now we can add Travis d'Arnaud to that list, and there's a lot of other guys that I'm not mentioning right now. That's just off the top of my head. So we got that to get into as well. The Yankees dropped the finale in Boston today, as they lost 10-2. Not a good performance today for rookie Davy Garcia, but the kid has been on a roll lately. He was due for a bad start. The Red Sox have as bad as a year as they've been having. The Red Sox still have a very good offense, even without Mookie Betts. And when you look at the role the Yankees have been on since they woke up from their slumber against the Blue Jays last week, where boy, oh boy, the Blue Jays came away from last weekend's series having a pretty decent run against the Mets, taking 2 out of 3, and the Yankees just knocked them around. The Yankees slamming home run after home run, beating them 20-6 one game, 13-2 another game. So the Yankees have, whoever did it, somebody woke up the sleeping giant, because the Yankees are awake right now, and as long as their starting pitching holds up, they should have enough in the bullpen and the bats to make a nice little run once the playoff comes, because the Yankees are going to be in it. And one thing the Yankees are going to have in their favor is that there are no off days in the postseason, as there normally would be. Like, normally in the divisional round and the National League Championship Series, there's enough off days where between, games 1 and 4, you could make it where your number 1 starter that starts game 1 is also starting game 4. So you can turn it around pretty quick, especially in a 7-game series. You could have your starter that starts game 1 pitch 1, 4, and 7. It's not going to be that way in this series or this postseason, as a matter of fact, until you get to the World Series. Then they actually have off days like they normally would. But in the other series this season, it's going to be going straight through. So there's a chance that if you have a 5-game series early on in the postseason, you're going to have to use 5 different starting pitchers. That's a legit chance, or depending how it breaks down, maybe you could have your number 1 starter pitch game 5. But there's not going to be, it's going to take a deep, deep pitching rotation to compete in this postseason. And because most teams don't have that, I think that bodes really well for the Yankees, because even though the Yankees might not have that pitching to match up with, even though they're not going to be there, a team like the Washington Nationals, who are pretty deep. And actually, the Nationals pitchers have not performed well this year at all. They have the second worst, ERA in baseball for starters. But if you have a long-term memory, just think back to a year ago at this time, where the Nationals were killing it en route to their their first ever World Series championship. So starting pitching goes a long way, and you're going to need a lot of it this postseason, because the Yankees' bats, specifically, is what I'm alluding to, are going to be able to beat up on a lot of these lesser starting pitchers, guys that maybe shouldn't even be in the league right now. But between opt-outs and injuries and things along those lines, there's going to be a lot of less than stellar pitching this postseason, most likely. We're not going to see the Strasburg performances of years past. We're not going to see the Garrett Cole performances of years past. There's a chance we see a little bit more Garrett Cole, but that also depends if the Yankees have confidence in running this guy out there for, on short rest, which I'm checking right now. If you can't see me, Garrett Cole has never pitched on short rest before. So you when you really think about that, do you want the first time that Garrett Cole is taking the ball on less than 4 days rest, that he's going to be doing that in the postseason in one of your biggest games? If it is a game five in the first round, that's an elimination game. I don't know if you want that. I don't know if you want Garrett, say he gets beat around, the Yankees get knocked out after his, decent regular season so far. He's going to be getting killed by Yankee fans if he has a bad game there, even if it's on short rest. So that's something that you have to keep in mind too. A lot of big decisions coming in the next couple of weeks for Aaron Boone. Not so much for the Mets manager Luis Rojas, as they dropped to 24 and 29 today and continue just to flounder in, I would say mediocrity, but mediocrity would be a much better word than what the Mets have given us over the last few weeks. And for most of the season, it's just an inconsistent garbage mess that we've seen from this team over this year. Do I know there have been circumstances out of their control? Yes. Obviously, we live in a COVID world right now where there were a lot of things that, may not have been problems at the beginning of this season in March when they first reported for spring training. But, like a Marcus Stroman opting out, which really threw a wrench into their plans. And Marcus Stroman really, you know, screwed the Mets over with that. I understand it was his decision making, and with his family and everything, you can't knock it. But um, you know, he really was able to get the best out of the situation this year, and now he becomes a free agent, and who knows what happens from there on. He's probably played his last game as a Met, and unfortunately, that wasn't in 2020. That was in 2019. So Marcus Stroman didn't contribute at all this year. Um, and Noah Syndergaard, too. Who could have foreseen Thor, Noah Syndergaard, going down with Tommy John surgery in March? Luckily, they caught it then. If they didn't catch it then they wouldn't have found out until now, and then next season would have been completely wiped out. But now there's a chance that if they do come back for a full year next year, and he's under normal circumstances with his rehab and everything, that Noah Syndergaard should be back around on or around the All Star break next year. I'm just gonna say date right now, probably July 12th, right around there. So that's a big possibility that he could be coming in right around there. Sometime right around the All Star break. So, but you never know. Even Zach Wheeler, when he had um, his Tommy John surgery, ended up taking a lot longer than that. So you just gotta hope he bounces back. And Zach Wheeler is definitely a name that a lot of Met fans would like to forget now. Now that the Wilpons, the soon-to-be former owners of the New York Mets, let this guy leave right as he's hitting stride. So just sad to see him go and contribute the way that he has been. But so the Mets and the Yankees both on completely different paths right now. The Yankees look like they're on their way to the bubble, which if you haven't heard, Major League Baseball has instituted a postseason bubble this year, much like the much like the NHL and the NBA have done this year, to rave results. Really, actually, if you look at it, I just heard a press conference with Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the National Hockey League, the other day, and he was touting the fact that they've done the NHL, since they went into the bubble on July 26th. They have done numerous a number of thousands of tests, and not one has come back positive. So the hockey guys are taking it seriously. Basketball, same thing. Basketball, you haven't heard any news about any positive COVID tests. You haven't heard anything about the bubble games getting suspended because of things like that. Like you've seen a couple of times in baseball this year, but baseball's done a good job since the early bungling of it with the Marlins early on. Who, by the way, who could believe the Marlins are actually in the playoffs this year and the Mets aren't? That's a tip of the cap to Derek Jeter on that one, as I'm sure a team that has taken a lot of guff since he took over in 2017, they're going to be sticking it to a lot of people this year, as they look like they've been playing much better baseball of late. They continue to hang in there in the playoff hunt, and it looks like the Marlins are going to be in there, and the Mets are going to be home. So, and who knows what's going on with all that as we look into if you want to look into our crystal ball, so to speak, right now, as the postseason is coming upon us now, and if the Mets aren't in this postseason, which they'd really have to go on some insane run right now. There's only about 8 games left. They've got 3 against the Tampa Bay Rays. They got what's it called? They have a big 4-game set at the end of the year against the Washington Nationals. So there's still a decent amount of time left, but unfortunately for the Mets, time is running out as they're 2.5 games out of a playoff spot, and you pretty much have to win all these games. And Tampa Bay is a really good team, and I know Washington on paper they're 19-31 right now. They are not a good team right now. They are the defending champions though, and even though World Series MVP Steven Strasburg is hurt and on the shelf at the moment, they are a dangerous team. They could still throw Patrick Corbin at you, who's a very good lefty. The Mets don't hit lefties very well. They could still throw Max Scherzer at you, who can alter a game at any given moment. The Mets just have to keep their heads down, and despite the fact that their playoff odds dwindle every single day, they just got to keep playing hard. And you got to hope that you get better production out of guys like, um, you know, Pete Alonso, who coming into today was 2 for his last 27. He's only hitting 210. I mean, this is a guy who has been touted as the face of the team and has severely, severely underperformed this year. Sure, his home run and his RBI numbers are kind of in the ballpark where you wouldn't where you wouldn't mind them. He's got 12 home runs, over 30 RBIs, so he's been somewhat productive in that respect. But and he's had a couple of big hits this year. You can't forget about the walk off against the Yankees. Um, you can't forget he had a big home run earlier this week against Philly. It just really makes you crazy with how inconsistent they've been, and Alonso really being the face of that. But then when you look at some other performances, I mean, Jeff McNeil has been on a tear, hitting over 400 in the month of September, really doing all he can to put this team in any position to do something. I think he's performed much better since they stuck him in left field as well. And Robinson Cano has had a fantastic season from an individual perspective. They've also had Michael Conforto go out there and just play fantastic. The guy is hitting over 330. He was 4th in the league in hitting coming into today. A couple of points off Freddie Freeman, the Atlanta Braves first baseman, who's leading the league at 350. So he's right on that tail. Conforto, who really, if the Mets are serious about getting this team together right now, and you gave DeGrom his extension. Obviously, I think they made the right decision holding off on guys like Alonso and McNeil because they still got a lot of time left on those guys. But you have to extend Michael Conforto. And I know Conforto's a Scott Boras guy, and they always go for the money, and they always like to actually get into free agency themselves. But you have to extend Michael Conforto because he is a rock to build around. And he's made some great catches this year, too, not even just from an offensive perspective, as he's been tearing it up all season. He's made some great defensive catches out there in right field. So that's a guy the Mets should be viewing as like the newer day Strawberry. Don't let him get away like Strawberry did. Let Michael Conforto play out his career in Queens, or at least the huge bulk of it. You'd like to see Conforto maybe be like the new David Wright. So and maybe Conforto will get that ring that eluded David Wright. So there's so much going on with all that, and then not even to look at from individual performances and the team-wide struggles the Mets have had this year. Once Steve Cohen takes over, who, by the way, billionaire Steve Cohen, if you don't know, bought the Mets for $2.47 billion, setting a record for an amount of money paid for a sports team in North America. And that's really amazing when you think about it, that the Mets set that record. It makes sense, though, because the valuation of sports teams go through the roof every year. Nobody could believe it in 2012 when the Magic Johnson led buyers group purchased the Dodgers for just over $2 billion. Now the Mets are getting over $400 million more than that just over 8 years later. And that when I said earlier that the Mets need 23 out of 29 teams, now I know a lot of people are going to look at that and say, well, that might be tough. This guy Cohen has a couple of questions about him. He's been in, there were people in his organization that actually went away for insider trading, but they didn't have anything on Cohen, and he was cleared, so he didn't do any jail time or anything. A couple of his associates did, though. But Steve Cohen, he has passed all the background tests. If you don't know, he's actually already a partner with the Mets. He's an owner. He owns 8% of them already. So once he makes his purchase, he'll be, I think they said the number is going to be anywhere between 90 and 95% of the owner. That the Wilpons will still retain 5% of their. But you also have to remember there's a couple of partial owners in there. Like actually, Anthony Scaramucci and Bill Maher are two guys that own a small portion of the Mets. So I don't know if Steve Cohen is going to be buying them out, or if they're still going to retain whatever small portion. It's probably between 1% and 2%, very, very small. So they're going to have a little bit as well. And there's going to be a lot of decision making that comes into that once Stevie Cohen takes over, because you're going to have, okay, if I'm the owner now and I'm calling the shots, if the Mets don't make the postseason this year, I'm sorry. I know it's been a crazy year. Brodie Van Wagenen is gone, in my opinion. That's what I would do. I don't know if Steve Cohen's going to do that. Maybe Steve Cohen says, you know what? I'm the new man in town. I'm going to take a year to get my bearings as the top guy now, and I'm going to give this guy another year. And Luis Rojas, I think, is the least to blame in this situation. As much as I think he has I think he has one thing wrong with his managing style that I don't like. I like a lot about him. I like that he's been very steady at times. You don't see him panic in the dugout. I think that he makes a good lineup card. I like the way he does it. He rewards guys that are performing well and bumps guys down or take them out of the lineup when they're not. And I think that's something that you can't say about a lot of managers. And he's done a very good job of that. Another thing is, like, Brodie Van Wagenen, like I said, is he going to be around here? What are they going to do? But the one thing I was saying about Rojas that I don't like is that I think he has a history of leaving starting pitchers in a little too long. That's a criticism that can easily be changed, because you got to remember too, this is the guy's first season managing in the major leagues, so it's something that he has to grow into. If he still had another half a season and 20 games more than that, actually, if he still had the other 100 games to play with this season, I can see right now that he's starting to realize to pull the plug when he has to. But when you even look just the other day, Seth Lugo, you could tell by the time Seth Lugo faced Bryce Harper for the second time when he hit that bomb, you could tell Seth Lugo had to get the hell out of there. That guy had nothing. I don't know what was wrong with him. To be honest, when Brodie came out and had a press conference the next day, I thought they were really going to announce that his UCL finally went, and because that's how bad that Seth Lugo looked. I thought he was injured. I'm happy to hear he wasn't. I haven't heard any news about Seth Lugo being injured, so I'm really hoping that he wasn't at all. But boy, he looked as bad as I've ever seen Seth Lugo look. And that's another thing that people have to remember too. Starting pitcher Seth Lugo is very different from relief pitcher Seth Lugo. Just look at the career splits. I'm sure there's a place you could find it. Go on baseballreference.com, look at his splits. He's much better as a relief pitcher than he is a starter. And, I know he hasn't, the last time that he was consistently a starter was 2017 and 18, but, just look at the numbers. That's all you need to do. Seth Lugo is a very good pitcher no matter where you put him, but he seems to be much more effective in short bursts as a reliever than as a starting pitcher. and trying to stretch him out, even though he really got belted from the first inning in this last game. But that's not the only time. There have been a lot of other times, especially with Steven Matz. Steven Matz got his head kicked off the other day, and I've been a constant defender of Steven Matz, but the season that he has had this year is beyond unacceptable. Beyond. This guy has had such a bad season that it's really shocking. You know, this is coming from a guy who was at Steven Matz's debut with my uncle and my cousin, having a great time, having visions that the Mets got the next big lefty starting pitcher out there. And boy, I remember even his last start that year in the regular season was just a six inning gem at Dodger Stadium, dominating a very good Dodger lineup. And he only came out because he ended up having his little elbow problem that took him out for the last 2 months of that season. But he was back in the postseason and pitching very well. He pitched very well, even in the World Series. Pitched very well, and you just gotta hope that I even thought maybe Matz was injured. That's how bad he's been this year. But you just gotta hope that Steven Matz that this season you could just wipe it out. It looks like it's a season that's going nowhere for the Mets right now, and unfortunately, you just gotta say, with a clean slate next season, I think that the Mets could do some real damage. I mean, they're not going to have Wilson Ramos here next year. A lot of Met fans are hoping that they could have a guy like JT Realmuto. That remains to be seen. He's the Phillies catcher right now who's going to be a free agent in the offseason. The Mets really, really need an upgrade at the catcher's position. Not only just a guy that can hit and be a constant threat at the plate, which you would have expected Ramos to do at least, but he's done the complete opposite of that this year. He's been a constant double play threat and rally killer, despite that he had a couple of hits today and another blowout loss. Big deal. But the thing about it is that right now, the Mets are kind of treading water, and you got to hope that once Stevie Cohen comes in, that changes. And that's really all you can say about that. So now that I didn't even intend to open with baseball, but I kind of had to get it off my chest. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I just used the first half of this show as my therapy session for the week. So thank you very much for listening to that and letting me get that off my chest. However, in the second portion of the show, as we come up on the first break here, the only break actually, of our show here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be talking about the Jets and the Giants, who continued in the Mets' trend of losing today. The Giants losing to Chicago in Chicago, the Jets getting blown out at home by the 49ers. And also we'll touch on a really incredible run by the New York Islanders. And I'm sitting here in my Ranger shirt right now, but that is by no means a slight to the New York Islanders, who I respect very much. I don't like their head coach. I still have nightmares about facing him when he was going against the Rangers with the Washington Capitals. But you got to respect Barry Trotz. He's a Stanley Cup winning head coach. He's a very smart guy. He makes his team play a smart defensive style of hockey, which I really never thought I'd say that the Islanders were doing, especially in those years with Tavares and the high scoring offenses. They'd score 6 goals a game, but they'd allow 7 or whatever it would be that night. But the Islanders have really tightened it up on all fronts. They got great performances from Varlamov and Greiss in the postseason. Really tightened it up defensively and went all the way to Game 6 of the conference final. So we'll recap that. We'll touch on everything when we get back. And stick around, me, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back in a minute. Thank you for tuning in.
You're listening to Sports Talk 1240 on Long Island's AM 1240. WGBB. Country Foot Care, official podiatrists of the New York Lizards, have been delivering state-of-the-art foot care with good old-fashioned caring of Long Island residents for over 30 years. Specialists in sports medicine and foot injuries, Country Foot Care can be reached at 516-741-FEET or online at countryfootcare.com. Want to advertise your business on Sports Talk 1240? Place an ad on sportstalk1240.com and run a radio commercial
special during the show every Sunday night here on AM 1240 WGBB. Our rates are very affordable. We'll even produce the radio commercial for you. Just head over to SportsTalk1240.com and fill out the Contact Us form and let us start promoting your business today. Unflippable, unflappable, unleakable. The Gustbuster is the only umbrella that won't flip inside out, rip, tear, or leak. Capable of withstanding winds over 55 miles per hour. All of our umbrellas are constructed of the finest quality materials and backed by a limited lifetime guarantee. What are you waiting for? Visit GustBuster.com and get your Gust.
Well, you taking phone calls tonight or no?
I actually didn't say it, but why? Is someone on the line?
No.
Okay.
I just feel like I'm just gonna gauge what you want to do when I do call. If not, I'm not going to call tonight.
That's true, actually. I always forget, too. So thank you for learning me. I'm going to give the number when I get back. Thank you.
Sunday night beginning at 8 p.m. right here on Long Island's AM 1240 WGBB, the station that serves your community. And now back to the show.
And we're back here, ladies and gentlemen. Rob Cramer coming at you with 516-623-1240 if you want to get in on the line. 516-623-1240 if you want to let me know your thoughts about anything I'm talking about. Be more than happy to chat here with you on a lovely Sunday night. But before we get to all that, this is This Day in Sports History. This day in sports history, September 20th, 1919. Babe Ruth ties the Major League record of 25 home runs in a single season with his ninth inning home run as the Red Sox beat the White Sox 4-3. Ruth would go on to set the mark that he'd break over and over and over again of 29 that year. Believe it or not, 29. There's going to be someone that hit 29 home runs in a 60-game season this year. So that's how far we've come. On this date, September 20th, 1931, Yankees star player Lou Gehrig drives in 4 runs to break his own record of 175 RBIs in a single season. He'd set the AL mark of 184 that year, but was bested for the Major League mark, a record by Hack Wilson, which still stands to this day, of 191 runs. On this date, September 20th, 1961, 3 years to the day after he no-hit the Yankees in 1958, Hoyt Wilhelm comes in relief to retire Roger Maris, who had already hit home run number 59 that day. Wilhelm induced a long fly ball to the outfield right in front of the fence to end Maris's pursuit of number 60 in 154 games in a well-remembered scene from even the movie 61. Very, very great movie. Also on this day, September 20th, 1973, before the Mets beat the Pirates 4-3 on a walk-off at Shea Stadium to pull within 1 game of 500 en route to their future National League pennant that year, Hall of Famer Willie Mays announced he will retire at the end of the season. Like I said, Mays would go on to play in the Fall Classic one more time as the Mets would drop that series in 7 to the Oakland A's. On this date, September 20th, 1987, Chicago Bears running back Walter Payton scores his NFL record 107th rushing touchdown as the Bears beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 20-3. And finally, on this day, September 20th, 1913, Yankees DH Alex Rodriguez, who now is no longer in play to buy the Mets, Alex Rodriguez broke Lou Gehrig's Grand Slam record by hitting the 24th of his career off Giants relief pitcher George Contos in a 5-1 win at Yankee Stadium. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is this day in sports history. So thanks for sticking around with me here on this Sunday night, September 20th. I'm your host, Rob Cramer. And like I said earlier, we've got a lot to get into right now. We talked about the Mets and the Yankees in the first half of the show. Now in the second half, we'll get into a little bit of football, as today was a crazy day in football. Not so much from a Jets and the Giants perspective, but we saw a lot of crazy things. A great comeback by the Dallas Cowboys, come back from 9 late in the game to take down, it was 39-30 Atlanta Falcons. And as the Falcons have a history of doing, they choked one out in dramatic, excruciating fashion once again as they lost this game 40-39. A lot of interesting things going on today. The Bills held on, beating the Dolphins 31-28. And then as we get to the other New York teams, at least New York does have one actual team in the Bills for football, at least. Um, the Buffalo Bills actually have a very good team, but as we look at the local teams, boy, the Jets just we'll start with the Jets. Unfortunately, um, the Jets went out there today and just had another awful game. They trailed big. They were down 31-6 at one point. They punched one in late to make it 31-13, falling to 0-2. They looked bad for most of the day. The 49ers, who you got to remember too, are the um, defending NFC champions. But the Niners were not without injury, as D Ford missed the game because of his neck. He's a great pass rusher for them. He got hurt in the game. Speaking of great pass rushers, Nick Bosa got injured in this game, as it looks like he tore his ACL, which is a trend that we're going to be getting into. And I've mentioned this before. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's no preseason games this year, that a lot of these guys are getting hurt. We saw Jimmy G go down, Jimmy Garoppolo. Um, he was banged up. There's a lot to do. When it comes to football is a contact sport. You really have to be in shape and be able to take hits and kind of numb your body to taking hits like that. And a lot of these guys are not in hit taking shape at this point in the season. It's only week 2. They've only got one game under their belt. They really have had no time on the practice field for the most part, especially compared to years past, where it had been cut down so much even before this year. But so it was 31-6, and Sam Darnold hit Braxton Berrios for a 30-yard touchdown score to make it 31-13, make it look a little bit better. But Darnold was under pressure all day, even for a non-existent 49er pass rush at this point. It looked like it existed today, even without Bosa for most of the day and without D Ford. They were still able to pressure Sam into a lot of bad situations. Luckily for the Jets, he didn't turn the ball over today. 21 out of 32 for 179 yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. But just like a lot of other teams, the Jets are dealing with an insane amount of injuries, as they have rookie wide receiver Denzel Mims on the injured list. Jamison Crowder, the other veteran wide receiver, is out for the week. They had Frank Gore, who is 36, 37 years old and one of the oldest players in the league. He was their starting halfback today, as he had took the bulk of the work from behind the QB. 21 carries for 63 yards, as Le'Veon Bell is now out for a couple of weeks. They said he's on injured reserve, which injured reserve in years past means you're out for a long time, but this year it means you can only miss 3 or 4 weeks. So they're hoping to have him back by week 5, which would be nice, but who knows about that. We saw the emergence of LaMichael Perrine, the rookie who the Jets drafted earlier this year. He made his NFL debut today, looking pretty decent. 3 carries for 17 yards. He showed a little bit of promise. I would have probably liked to see a little bit more of him, but I think they were going light because he also, believe it or not, is coming off an injury. He missed last week, so this was his first game as his NFL debut, as I said. Former Patriot Chris Hogan, the wide receiver, looked very good today, actually. Had his best game as a Jet out of both of them that he's played. He had 6 catches for 75 yards today. He was really the big threat that Sam Darnold had to go to. So that was good to see. And also, very, very good to see. I really don't know. I really don't know. I can't properly convey how important this was to see this, especially with the, still struggling aspect of Sam Darnold, who I'm not saying that Darnold is not going to be, potentially the quarterback that the Jets need or the Jets want, but right now he still has a lot of question marks around him. Quinnen Williams today, he took away a lot of those question marks from him. He's the former number 3 overall pick. This is a guy who, a lot of people said could have gone first overall in the draft. I think that's a little crazy, especially when you look at a guy like Ed Oliver that the Bills got later in the round, and he looks like a much better player right now. But Quinnen Williams today took a step forward in establishing himself as the nose tackle the Jets really need to get in the backfield, become a legit pass rusher and a legit disruptor in the opposing team's offense. As today he had 4 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble, and that gets check mark after check mark after check mark from me. You got to give it up for Quinn Williams, who I've given a lot of crap to. I've heard guys on the fan like Joe Beningo and every big Jet fan you want to listen to has been getting on guys like Quinn Williams who are just not producing. Because look, you can run down the list of Jets draft picks that have underperformed over the last 10 years, going back, really to the Rex Ryan era, and before that, you go back to D. Milner and Dustin Keller, and you can run it down. You don't even need me to rehash the pain that the Jets have given their fans from a draft perspective, and specifically after shipping out Jamal Adams to the Seattle Seahawks, which was a disgrace in itself. The most recent number 1 draft pick the Jets have on their team right now is Sam Darnold from 2018. So you really, you just gotta hope the Jets gotta keep these first round picks around, and the only way to keep doing that is to make them good. And when they get good, unlike Jamal Adams, pay them. Crazy idea, I know, right? Another good thing. Alec Ogletree, who the Jets got, he was on their practice squad for a week. They got him from the Giants off waivers. 2 tackles for loss today. He wasn't on the field that much, but I like what I saw out of him. This is a guy that could contribute at some point in the future. He might have been overpaid at the Giants, might have underperformed, but you got to hope he knows his NFL life is in jeopardy right now, so you got to hope he's fighting for it. Also, Pierre Desir, former Colt, who GM Joe Douglas brought in. Like what I see out of him today. He had an interception with a 23-yard return on that. Very good what I saw out of him. And also, high-priced middle linebacker Avery Williamson, back in the lineup today. Couple of tackles today, nothing big. One for a loss. This is his first game since 2018. If you remember last year, he got injured in a ridiculous set of circumstances where in a preseason game late he should have never been on the field. Gase still had him out there. Gee, what a shock. The genius, Adam Gase, got something else wrong. And you know what? Let me lean into Adam Gase for a minute, too. Because, the genius that is the Jets ownership, Chris Johnson, Woody Johnson, and if you're not familiar, these are the brothers that are the heirs to the Johnson & Johnson, the baby powder and all that kind of stuff. I think they should have stuck to baby powder because these guys have no idea how to run a professional football team. One of them is prancing around in England now as some kind of diplomat, and this guy, Chris, right now is giving a vote of confidence to an incompetent head coach, Adam Gase, who doesn't know the first thing about... I heard an interview with Michael Irvin earlier this week, on WFAN, and he said that, sure, Adam Gase might know a lot about coaching football. Like, he might know the X's and O's. He might understand a lot about the game and be a smart coach overall. But what does he know about coaching the men that play the game? About keeping a team together? About, that's one thing, too, that Jamal Adams said. That this guy wouldn't even address the locker room at halftime if the team was getting killed. Well, you know what that means? That the team hasn't seen him at halftime the first 2 weeks of the season because they've been getting their heads kicked in the first 2 weeks so far. So where is this guy? Does he disappear? And just earlier this week, we're getting a vote of confidence for this awful, awful head coach from an incompetent ownership. And this story comes out earlier today, actually, from Manish Manetta. I don't know if you follow him. He's a sports writer for the Daily News. He has been in the crosshairs of the Jets the last couple of years because he's put out a couple of damaging stories to them. And while I've had my issues with Meta in the past, he usually is a decent writer, and you can't, he's usually on point. usually if he's writing something, there's a little smoke to the fire. And supposedly, Adam Gase really doesn't care at all what Jet fans or anybody else think of him regarding his awful head coaching performance, as he was quoted as saying by members of his own people that work for him to Manish. He said, on not caring about Jets fan criticism, I quote, I'm rich as F. And you can finish that F in your head because I can't say it unless I want to get thrown out of here. But that's what he thinks of the Jets fans. Is that he's got so much money in the bank now that he doesn't really care what the hell you think. So the Jets could go 4-12 this year, and it's not going to do anything to this guy. He I just can't believe that the Jets made the terrible decision to hire this man. As when I first heard it proposed, what I guess 2 Decembers ago, I thought it was a joke. I thought there was no way that this ownership group would be stupid enough to hire this guy. But you know what? They're the Jets owners, and that's what they do. They make stupid decision after stupid decision, including letting Mike McCagan, the former GM, draft his entire draft class and sign free agents for his head coach that he wasn't even going to be around for. They let him sign free agents in March, do the draft in April, and then they fired him in May, only to bring in a new GM. It, it it's it's so insane. It sounds like it's something out of a movie or a book that you'd read, and you say, "This sounds fake." There's no way someone could be that stupid. There's no way someone could be that out of their mind that they would think that that even makes sense in any respect. But you know what? That's the Jets for you. And to get to as I continue railing against the teams that I root for here, let's talk about another team in New York that had a tough day today. Not nearly as tough as the Jets, though, but it was a very, very tough loss for them, even though they played pretty decent in it. The Giants ended up losing today 17-13 at Chicago. Soldier Field, tough tough place to play. First of all, the Bears are a pretty decent team. They're hoping to compete this year for a playoff spot. They were a kick away from the championship game 2 years ago. So the Bears still have a pretty decent, rock solid roster, even though they had a bad year last year. They built a 17-0 lead today against the Giants. Like I said, they held on for a 17-13 win. Mitchell Trubisky for them had a pretty good game. He threw 2 touchdowns, was also picked off twice. If you look at Bradbury, former Carolina Panther, a lot of familiarity with the Giants GM Dave Gettleman, picked this guy up. He's come in these first 2 weeks on the team. He's played very well. Also, former Notre Dame cornerback, who I always really thought could turn himself into a good NFL player, is out there. Is Julian Love has really come into his own, looking like he could be a starting starting quarterback in this league. Looks like he really could. And also the Giants got a lot of good things too, as Blake Martinez played well, 6 tackles and a sack. Logan Ryan, forced a fumble today, was very good. Daniel Jones lost a fumble. Evan Ingram, 6 catches, 65 yards. And you know what, actually? I'm going to take a call. I want to talk to my old buddy Doug. Doug, how you doing today, my friend? Good. Oh, you nailed it, man. Mm-hmm. Very true. So, oh God, yeah, you got that right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Well, I really think bad juju kind of does have a little bit of truth to it because it really all starts from the top. You really hit it. The Maras have not been running the ship as well. They were one of the best run teams in football for really ever since the NFL had to step in and put in the GM that set everything up in the 80s. So really, they had a good 40-year run almost, where they were one of the best run teams, like Pittsburgh Steeler like. And ever since Wellington passed away a few years ago, that has not been the case. And it's the same thing with the Mets because they have incompetent owners, and also with the Knicks too, as we all know. Hmm. You're absolutely right. Hmm. Yep. 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 Nope. Doug, you're very right, my friend. And I got to wrap it up here. I'm up against the clock. But Doug, I want to say thanks for calling in, man, and it's good to hear you're doing well, my friend. You too, Doug. Have a good night, my friend. And I want to thank Doug for calling in. He's always great, and he couldn't be more right. He couldn't be more right. He alluded to Saquon's injury, as it looks like Saquon Barkley suffered a torn ACL. They haven't confirmed it yet, but that could be in the end of this year for him. Hopefully not, but that's the way it looked, and that could even impact next season depending on his recovery path. So that's just another bad hit for the Giants. It's very sad to see that go down. But just like he said, who knows? Is it bad juju? Is it bad running? Is it bad ownership? Bad coaching? Maybe a little bit of everything, unfortunately. And so as I'm up here against it, ladies and gentlemen, I got less than 5 minutes left. I just want to talk about. I was hoping to dedicate a little bit more time to the Islanders, but because they do deserve it. They do deserve it. You got to tip your cap to the Islanders as they have had, or they did have, such an incredible run. So many amazing overtime games, ridiculous wins where you didn't think they were going to come back. They even had the game against the Flyers where they were down 3-0, tied it in the last 5 minutes, scored the 3 goals, lost in overtime. Just an incredible game. They beat the Flyers in 7. They knocked out the Panthers. Then they really took the Tampa Bay Lightning to the limit. And even though Tampa Bay is down in the Stanley Cup final right now, 0-1 after a 4-1 game 1 loss, Tampa Bay is going to come back strong. And the Islanders, we've been finding out all the injuries they were dealing with and everything, and every team in hockey that goes through a long run like that is going to deal with it. But you just really have to tip your cap to guys like Matt Martin. It's a guy who had his baby. His wife gave birth to his first child. I believe it was his first child, at least. Um, you know, after he was already in the bubble, and he just got to meet his kid for the first time yesterday when he got home, and or whatever it was. I think it was yesterday, in the last couple of days. But that just goes to show the sacrifice that these guys make. And Matt Martin had a great playoff run. Varlamov, the goalie, amazing playoff run for him. He had a couple of bad games in there, but who doesn't, especially when you're playing great teams in there. Thomas Greiss, that could be the end of his Islander career. Great playoff run. Matt Barzal, great playoff run. Josh Bailey, he might not be, one of the great regular season performers, and he might have underperformed for, a top 10 NHL draft pick. But you do have to say the guy has been, and he has found a knack for being in the right place at the right time. And he racked up a lot of points this postseason, especially assists. And you got to give it to guys like J.G. Pageau and everybody else like that. As I just want to tip my cap to the Islanders because they certainly deserved it. Head coach Barry Trotz, GM Lou Lamoriello have a lot to be proud of and a lot to look forward to, Islander fans. So everybody, thank you for tuning in here for me right now as you listen to the final hour of Sports Talk 1240. I want to thank WGBB for having me on yet again. I want to thank my producer behind the glass, Brian Graves. Great as always, true professional. Thanks for the lead-in from Dave. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and have a great week. I'll catch you next time. I'm Rob Cramer.